Let's just say the weather here this spring in Maryland has been a little bit moody, or it's having mood swings. We'll get days that are really warm and all of a sudden days that are really cold. And today is pretty cool in the tent. It came in, it's 55 degrees, still kind of early in the morning. So probably no glassing happening today, but that's all right because we've got other things to do. And that is actually measuring out positions of bulkheads. And so you're probably saying, well, wouldn't that have been done in the factory back in Vietnam? And actually it was, but we're making a few tweaks, changing positions just a little bit. So what Matt and I are going to do is now re-measure those positions, mark them. He's going to go through and grind. And so then we can start putting in the unidirectional to just kind of like strengthen everything up here and prepare for those bulkheads to go in. But you can kind of see right now we've temporarily put bulkhead 3 in. Obviously it hasn't been trimmed down, it's sitting a little high. But can you imagine what it's going to look like once we start getting those in? It's such a huge difference. After 8 years of the nomadic life, involving crossing oceans in a 34-foot Sabre, refitting an aluminum boat, and then taking that to the Arctic Circle, we're back at it again with a brand new build. This is Matt and I'm Jessica. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and join us every week as we start our newest project of building a 42-foot catamaran from the ground up.
This is it. This is the final bulkhead plan. This was modified last on January 29th. So this is the newest copy. What we're gonna do is, the way that this reference works is it's all based on the aft edge of the transom. I know that is 20 millimeters thick, so you add 20 millimeters to each one of these numbers. And it's the way we have it set up now with my awesome penmanship and drafting skills. We have it set up now that we're gonna do from that aft edge all the way forward, and we're gonna get each one of those bulkhead positions perfectly aligned, perfectly in place. I had done it previously. You can kind of see that this one gets modified, moved forward just a little bit. This one's 10 millimeters off. That one's probably 15, 20. It just keeps cascading that direction. And so we're gonna lay them up properly this time. So instead of that just being fairly random, we'll set them up properly, and then I'll be able to cut these new slots and move everything over.
I've got the tape measure firmly against the transom here.
Okay.
And we've subtracted our 20 millimeters because that is the thickness of this.
1645. So 2685. 2685.
Matt has already gone through and done the first set of measurements, but because we always want to measure twice, sometimes 3 times, I'm going to go through now and double check his work. Okay, so we're going for 975. So far, so good.
Is that off?
You drew a crooked line.
Wow.
Well,
Wow.
straighten it out for him. 2685, 3675. I show a 2 millimeter difference.
Okay.
It's like, huh?
Do your correction.
Yeah. Might be checking this the 3rd time.
Yep.
Ah, my tape measure. Now we've got the big jump.
Okay. And a 3rd time.
Yeah. So what I found checking Matt's measurements is once I was about 4 of them in, my measurements were about 1, maybe 2 millimeters forward of his marks. But I actually blame myself for that. I think the first time we did it, I wasn't holding the tape measure extremely tight against the back, so I was causing Matt's measurements to be off. So that's on me. We're gonna do it again.
After that, So all the bulkheads are the same on this side, but we do add 2 in midship area where the head is going to be. But yeah, so real simple, easy, use the same measurement.
For once, we're kind of wishing the sun would go away and it would just get really cloudy and dark for a little bit, because Matt's got the laser level so we can officially kind of line everything up. But with it being as bright as it is in here right now, it could be a little hard to see. And so we talked about coming back like later once it's darker, but then Matt loses the opportunity to do all of his grinding today, so we kind of lose a day. So, bit of a bummer. We'll see how this goes.
Well, we know that the hulls are level fore and aft. These positions are level fore and aft, so is that bridge deck too. So we can use that along with our perpendicular to that, basically, to put our laser level and get that adjustment from side to side, so we know exactly where the bulkhead's gonna end up falling. We have our little reference mark on each side, so we need to connect that across the bridge deck. And to do that, again, that laser will end up going, we just have to adjust it so it's hitting the points on both sides. And then we can make little marks on the bridge deck, connect those, and that is exactly where that bulkhead is gonna fall. Same thing over on this side. So we'll do that. The problem we run into is it's so bright here that it's very difficult to see the line. This would be best done at night type of thing, but we want to get started on this project and keep moving, so we're going to give it a shot and see if we can get it done.
So we wanted to get just a little bit of practice under our belts before we show this on camera, because otherwise this would just be a show of us trying to figure things out. I mean, it is, it's not. But you actually want to see how it works instead of us fumbling around. But we did get the lines in, so after we did that, we had the laser hitting on these lines, and once we got that, we decided to make a few marks on the outer part of the hull. But most importantly, we also did it on the inner part of the hull, kind of like leading up to the deck. And that's where the bulkheads will go, and Matt can then start preparing to get the unidirectional in. But since we have 4 more to do, because there are 5 bulkheads that transverse between both sides, we're gonna take you along on the ride with us now. And since it is still fairly bright in here, these have come in very handy for finding the line. On this side, you are still about 1.5 centimeters aft of the line that it needs to be on. Yep, that's pretty close right there. Yeah, mine is right on the line.
I'm 6 inches out. 6 inches, so then move forward, about 3. And about 2 inches.
Back and forth, back and forth. Look at that, after like 8 tries, we're right on the line, so it's time to start marking. I don't know if you can see what's hitting the wall here. And then I'm gonna have to take this up here and mark there as well. The good news is that we are on our very last bulkhead marking. The bad news is there's some complications to be able to get that line going. For starters, Matt has to level out the tripod because of course that is where the curve starts to happen in the bridge deck. And then we'll have to see if this kind of like holding pad gets in the way of coming across this line here. So you are, that's what I'm trying to find out. You are forward, you need to go aft. And now for drawing the lines.
Now we get to measure and see how close we were between these two. Roughly there. We are right actually on
Nice.
Yes, yes. We are so it ends up being 1 millimeter off, which could be just a pen line or anything like that. So this stage, that really doesn't matter at all. What we're also going to do is, because I have to sand this area and prep it, because this is right where that unidirectional is going to go, right over here. I don't want to lose that mark. So what we'll do is we're going to measure off about 20, 30 centimeters off, put a mark in there as a reference point. We'll do that with a red ink. And then when we're done, so I'm going to sand this, of course that's going to be gone then. But when we get done, we'll know where our reference point is. We can measure back to this and then put a line there again. And then we can lay our unidirectional. But before we actually put the bulkheads in finally, we will go through and do that same thing with the laser just to make sure that we get it absolutely perfect. But for where the unidirectional is going to go, that's no problem at all.
It can be a millimeter off.
Yeah, it can be a millimeter or two off. Not a big deal there. But we're close. That's good.
So one edge of the carpenter square I've got following the line that we've made. I'm just gonna make a mark right here where the top of the ruler was, and then following it all the way to the bottom, make a straight line, and then we'll know that we need to come in this distance once we're ready to go back to that.
How often does this happen?
This is the strut of a proud man. We did all of that with a laser level. So we measured, because it's the same, of course, dimensions that are down there. Measured, we were 1 millimeter off on the first one. Every other one was absolutely perfect. I mean, absolutely perfect. No idea how that actually happened, but it is. We'll never be able to duplicate that again. So we're going to try our best to preserve this area as much as possible. Oh, that's fulfilling. That's a great feeling. So thank you, Laser. You did your job. Today's fun project is going to be filling in these voids. This trough or area behind us that is, it's basically where the two flanges meet, and there was depth difference between the core on this side and core on this side. So we need to fill that in because those unidirectional strips that we're going to be adding, those kind of belts that go from one hull side to the other side across this bridge deck here, we need to make a level surface for those to cross. And also it needs to have good compression strength as well. So we could fill them with a bunch of filler with chopped strand in it or whatever that we wanted to, but that adds a lot of weight. And the other thing it does is it uses up a lot of vinyl ester too and a lot of filler. So the thing that we think is going to be the best approach, or the direction that we're going to take, is some offcuts that we have of foam core that we took from another section, kind of one of those doorways that we cut out, that we're not going to actually use the insert part or the middle part of that. So the extra offcuts that we have that are about 20 millimeters thick of foam core, what we'll do is we'll cut 3-inch wide sections of them, which will fill in this trough, and we'll split those in half. So we'll cut those 3-inch wide sections in half, so 75 millimeters wide, cut those in half, which would then be about 10 millimeters thickness, which will fill in this void for us. We'll have to taper them a little bit and trim them to make them fit, but then we'll just bond those in place, and that gives us a good bridge and should make it pretty flush from side to side. Still take a little fairing, but a lot less than what we need otherwise, and it's very strong, great compression strength there. So we're gonna need 5 of those for the 5 different bulkheads. Over on the other side, it's a little bit different, kind of more of a gradual taper. In its deepest section is 7.5 millimeters thick, and then it kind of tapers up to nothing. It gets even with the core over there. So it's going to take a little bit more work with the grinder, but we should be able to make that work. These are 10 millimeter pieces, blanks now. So they're gonna end up going basically right here. They fit, how to tell here. They fit well on this side. On this side, we're going to need to taper them off because they are standing a bit proud there, and of course we want to remove that. So that's basically going to be the next job then, is just to take a sander to the foam side or a grinder or whatever, and just try to get that taper built in there. It's going to take a little bit on the first one. After that, then I'll know roughly how deep I need to do it all the way around, and can kind of go from there. This is when a contouring tool would work really, really well for this, but I don't have one, so just do it the old-fashioned way. And 9.8. Okay, so it's straight and tapered down to 6.4. Give it a shot. So here is the first attempt to try to get it close. Now again, this is going to have filler adhesive, basically to bond this into place. Just kind of use this as a straight edge right now. And it looks like it's still a little proud. So I need to take just a bit more off. That's not bad though. This is the taper from like the third attempt now to try to get that contour. It's pretty close there, and when we press that in, it actually looks good all the way across. So once this is bonded into place, it's going to act like just a support then, or kind of a bridge from these two pieces, and give a nice contour through here. So now I need to do that 4 more times for the 5 bulkheads total, and then do the ones over on the other side, and then we can just bond them in place.
After Matt had sanded and shaped our foam inserts to sit in the trough of the seam, it was time to adhere them to the boat. With our usual thickened vinyl ester mix, the backsides were coated and the foam pieces were lined up based on the measurements we had taken, so our unidirectional fiberglass would pass right over it. We'd let them cure overnight so the new surface could be sanded and prepped. But that would leave us all set for our next project of laying down our unidirectional in the areas where our 5 bulkheads will span across the deck. Hello there everyone, we hope that you enjoyed this episode, and it's time for our usually weekly question and answer.
Sometimes,
You
yeah.
guys have been a little quiet lately, so we haven't had anything to answer, but this past or last week's episode where we were seaming the deck, there were a few things that came up a lot, and one of the biggest questions we had, or that asked most, was after we wet our 1208 fiberglass and we were bringing it over to the seam to roll out, why was I doing it underhand instead of having it the other way where I could just like slide it out? There's a few reasons for that. I'll do what I remember, and then Matt can
Okay.
pick up the slack. One of the reasons that we have it rolled that way is because when it is on the wetting table, not wedding, wetting, we need the top strand to be facing up. So it spanned, like the whole length of the deck. Our table is not that long, so we had to do sections like where it was rolled out and then we rolled up. So of course the easiest way to do that was to start rolling it on itself.
On the top.
Yep.
I mean, it was totally possible to do
It
it
was-
the other direction, but then we run into the other issues.
Yep. Some of the other issues is that the more you handle it, the more the fibers start to separate. So if we had done it one way and then tried to roll it again the other direction, it would have been much harder to apply and to keep a smooth finish. But mostly when you do the underhand roll out, you have better control of where it goes because it's such a long tape again that if we started at one end and had the capability for it to like unroll overhand, it would have probably just like rolled into the hull, and it's going to pick up
Yeah.
debris and it's going to get messy. So that it was a little more time consuming to get it out, but it gave us more control of where it ended up. And I think there's another reason.
No, that was totally the reason.
Was it?
Yeah, that was the biggest thing. It's just when we just with the two of us working and the way that we kind of work, we'd lose control of it. So this way, it was like almost having chocks on it. It was like it stopped it from just unrolling
like
itself.
unrolling itself.
We could control where it's going then at that point. Yeah, it's a little bit more work, but it's a heck of a lot easier
You
than just
make
having
up
it.
that once you're
Oh my gosh,
applying
we've done it the
so.
other way a few times before, and we end up chasing the roll as it's spinning out of control.
Yeah,
So
I
this
actually
is-
just did that today. On
just
another
did that a few
project.
minutes ago.
Yep.
As you can see, we just
We
got done
just finished
fiberglassing.
working.
Yep. Yeah.
So the other exciting news you want to say?
Container number 2 is on its way.
We've put in the
We put in
order.
the order at least for it. So.
To Baltimore this time.
Yep. But as you guys know, we got the quotes. They just keep going up and up and up, and just the way that everything looks like it looks like this is the time to do it. And quite frankly, we are moving through the stuff that we have here, and we could see, in 2 months running out of
Running
things.
out of stuff to
So that was a big part of it. But the biggest thing is just we don't know what the future holds. So at least we know what it is now. Whatever, just ignore it, write the check for it, and ignore it, and
Plus,
pretend it never
as
happened.
as we're getting into summer now, everybody tells us about the heat and how bad July and August are. So if we can get the container at the beginning of July, I mean, obviously being outdoors to unload it, we might have the ability to start bonding some of the pieces together. So the cooler, the better. The earlier in July, the better. So that was one of the reasons too I wanted to get that order in ASAP.
We're just so excited to actually see the pieces now. So now that we've finally got our handle on all the other pieces that we have scattered around, we got our inventory and that kind of stuff, and we know where each one of those things is located, we're ready for some
we're really-
excitement.
yeah,
So we're ready for a new piece to arrive.
Terry over at
yeah.
Max Cruise will just like send photos of the progress on their production built boats, and we're just like, I cannot wait to get to that point.
I know there's so many cool little things that they're doing over there, and they've done with the plans, with the design, and like I said, I can't wait to get my hands on it and actually start playing with some of the stuff. So,
So that is, and
cockpit and those things.
we'll keep you updated once it actually does leave Ho Chi Minh to start making its way over here. Hopefully we'll be able to track it like we did the last one.
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't go south and then come back north, because that was just weird.
Yeah, but that's okay. So with it arriving to Baltimore, Alex, again, the hero from when we were unloading the last one, has a kind of a transportation trucking company, and he is licensed, and his
Into
crew
the
is
Port of
licensed to actually be
Baltimore.
able to get into the Port of Baltimore. So he'll be able to go pick it up, bring it here. We should have more than 2 hours to unload the thing. It's all around just a better plan, and so we're very excited about that.
Yeah.
And then, another thing people were asking about too was the staggering of the tapes, how we put the wider tape on the bottom
That was
and
it. I knew there was another
yep,
one.
narrower tape on top of that. And what it's big reason is that's a technique that a lot of people use with epoxy resin, because epoxy has good gap filling abilities. The problem that we've seen before, and again, pros can probably get around this well enough, but when we're dealing with the tape, the cloth with the chop strand on the back of it, it's a fairly thick piece of fiberglass. when we do that, if we put the smaller one down first, then when we put the larger one over the top of it, on either side of it, where it has to transition down from the over the smaller piece, we typically end up with a little void that ends up running on either side because the chop strand prevents it from kind of conforming and twisting down. And even though we're talking about such a small little thing, it's one of those things that we've ran into the problems before where we get it all done, it looks beautiful, come back a couple hours later, and all of a sudden there's these little white streaks that run down either side, and those are voids, and that is to be avoided. We found it's just much easier for us to do it the way that the factory does it, and the way that the design is laid out too with the vinyl ester, is to lay the wider pieces first and then the narrower pieces. And you'll see that in a lot of, majority of production boats are done that way. Again, it's more of a thing that I've seen with epoxy, that they do it the other direction. It's the thing that like West Systems suggests, and again, that's because of that gap filling abilities. Those little extra voids, the epoxy can fill in there and actually create its own little transition between the two. So long explanation. Sorry.
Long, I know.
Yeah.
Time to wrap this up. Hopefully that answered your questions from the past video. Definitely keep those questions coming because I think we enjoy sitting here talking about that. Hopefully you like listening to us.
Yeah, this way we don't have to sit there and try to answer all the little messages and that kind of stuff. It's
and for all those
an
who
easier way
were thinking it but never asked. So yes, stay tuned for next week's episode and keep the questions coming.
I am so excited to continue to get all of our patrons' names up on our walls here in the Catamaran. And again, this is a space that is never going to be painted, never going to be covered. For as long as we have the boat, all of our patrons' names will be on display here. So again, make sure to go ahead and check out our Patreon account on how you can get your name up here. Link is in the description below. But I do want to give a couple of shout outs because these are now the patrons that have been with us since we left Indiantown with Elements, our aluminum boat. So they've been with us for quite a while now. And let's see. In that list, we've got Greg Guthman, who is here in Annapolis, has given us a wonderful welcome since we've been in town and came to unload the boat with us. Newer is Pete McCardle. He is the marina owner here at Kentmore and takes such good care of us. Now I'm trying to zoom out. So as you can tell, there's still open space that we are waiting to fill here. But check out our Patreon account and hopefully we will see your name up here in the future as well.
It's hot.
Oh, it's only 71 in here.
It's still hot.
I need to go I need a hot shower. I want to go to there.
I think it's responsive behind us. Yeah.
All right, are you ready?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Give me your freedom. Whoa, yeah, me to pieces. Yeah, I need it. Want your pandemonium. Life is so easy. Whoa, you love me to pieces. Yeah, I need it. Want your pandemonium.